Minister, thanks for your time as always. I want to go to the RBA statement yesterday where the Governor and the Board, they repeatedly talk about the capacity pressures on the economy, essentially. That's part of the inflation story. Capacity pressures reflect in part the greater momentum in demand seen in recent months. When we talk about capacity, it's part of the story is the government spending, isn't it? Because you need room or capacity for private sector investment. So when the Treasurer says it's all private demand, isn't it missing that other very big piece of the puzzle?
I think what the bank itself and Treasury have outlined is that public sector demand has been over, or the growth in public sector demand has retreated. Private sector activity has increased over that period. I think you're right to point to the importance of fiscal discipline, and we've had a pretty tight approach to fiscal discipline, to surpluses, banking essentially almost everything that we've saved.
Still the highest spending in 40 years outside of COVID. Well, that's a lot.
I mean, look, I'm not sure that comparison tables are that illuminate too much, but the Howard government was the biggest spending government in Australian history. $20 billion savings measures just in the last MyEFO. Now, obviously, that happened in December. There was a lot going on for the country in December, but that's $20 billion.
But do you need to go further, though? Because, as I say, this seems like an indirect poke at the government spending by the RBA, saying, referring to capacity so many times, isn't this an indirect crack at the government saying you're spending too much?
I guess this is what I'm trying to say. Well, of course, every budget, every MyEFO, every opportunity, the Treasurer and Finance Minister and all of us understand our responsibility to make sure that not only is there no wasteful spending and identifying opportunities to terminate programs that are no longer delivering, or to make sure that we're spending on priorities that really matter. Also, I have to say, in my portfolio area, in industry, I'm making sure that we're investing in the capacity of the future so that we've got capacity in our manufacturing sector in particular to grow, to lift productivity.
But you know, as Industry Minister, you don't want to be competing. The private investment shouldn't be competing with the public dollars on infrastructure,
I'll give you a good example.
You'd be hearing that, wouldn't you, from the private sector?
Last week, what I'm hearing from the private sector, so Gladstone, Central Queensland, last week, $75 million from the National Reconstruction Fund invested in Alpha HPA, which will be the world's largest high-purity alumina processing plant. So it'll increase our manufacturing sector, it'll increase our capacity for growth, it'll build more stability and resilience into that industrial economy. So it's an investment in productive capacity. It'll lift productivity. It'll create 500 blue-collar jobs in Central Queensland.
That's driving.
So I say
you're saying you're driving private investment in that sense.
Driving private investment. So $225 million in total as a result of that investment that will open a new factory that will expand private investment, and government working as a partner with the private sector to deliver growth, productivity uplift and a more sophisticated, resilient economy. So government's got a complex role to play here. Yes, we've got to focus on spending, and we have been. Previous government, zero surpluses. In the short time we've been in government, too.
But you don't have the official rules. Why doesn't the Treasurer put the rules, a cap on spending as a percentage of GDP? He's dropped those.
Well, they had rules and they blew it every time. Like, they had rules and rhetoric. We've had delivery. Like, that's the contrast. We've had two surpluses.
But you've got a lot more to do. If you're the highest spending government in 4 decades outside of COVID, that's...
Every single budget...
It might be coming back, but you've got a fair way to go.
But every single budget, like the proof of the pudding, of the fiscal pudding is in the eating. Every single budget, every MyEFO, opportunities to trim spending are being adopted. We have demonstrated that. Surpluses that the other side talked about but never delivered. I was here, I think it was one of my first years here, when we all sat around and they had coffee mugs printed boasting about their surplus. I've got one in my office.
Is that if Josh Frydenberg comes back, you want to keep that as a bit of a memento for it? But on the interest rate question, though, for punters, Those with mortgages, they'll be looking at the Treasurer going, and the Prime Minister saying, you said this dragon was licked. You know, we've beaten the inflation dragon, but that's not the case.
Well, I think, to be fair to Jim and the Prime Minister, what they've said is we've made very significant improvements in inflation terms. I think when we came to government, inflation was north of 6% and going up rapidly. It is now, whether it's underlying inflation or the headline inflation, sitting above where the Reserve Bank wants it to be, but sharply south of where it was. An uptick in interest rates is not welcome news for mortgage holders. Absolutely, we understand that. And both on the spending side, the government's been very disciplined, but also thinking about shaping a future economy that's more productive and more resilient, which in itself is in the interests of, lower cost increases, lower inflation, more productivity, stronger growth. We're focused on both those objectives.
Do you need to slow down some of the infrastructure spend, wind it back, delay, to free up the space for the private sector?
If you have a look under the bonnet of the inflation figures, what you're seeing is it's not being driven by infrastructure, investment in infrastructure. It's not being driven by investment in productive capacity. It's not being driven by service delivery. There are some sectors of the economy, some of the areas where assistance to households has tapered off, in holiday travel, like a range of quite specific sectors where there are what I would regard as temporary impacts. It seems to me to be a strange conclusion to reach that we should then somehow slow down building the infrastructure that the Australian economy and Australian households.
So you wouldn't do that.
We'll make judgments in the budget about that. Okay. I just say investment.
But you're saying it's not necessarily capacity constraints there that's causing this.
Investment in future capacity is good for the economy. It's good for growth, and it's good for future productivity. Shaping a future economy that's stronger and safer in an environment where, Australia's future, in a more volatile world, in a world that's going to be more challenging for Australia, we've got to attend to shaping that future economy, and we've got to be disciplined about the kind of spending that we're engaged in, and that's what we're doing.
Obviously, we know, and you've been around politics long enough to know that the cycles come and go. At the moment, though, this is a very low ebb for the opposition. It's a shocking position right now. Is it crucial the government remains disciplined, keeps focused in terms of not just the politics, but the economics and everything? Because we know that the Australian people won't reward a government that they get, punished by or is complacent.
Your viewers should be reassured. But, what I say on this program about us being, while these guys are in this terrible mess that they have brought upon themselves, we are focused for exactly that reason. Like, we feel the responsibility of government intensely, that focus on discipline, whether it's in fiscal terms, but also being focused on the things that matter for Australian households, the centre of Australian politics, where suburban and regional Australians are. That's what counts for this government in a policy sense. And of course, that has a political implication as well. That's the kind of government that we are, and making decisions about shaping Australia for the future that makes us more economically resilient, stronger and fairer. That's what this government is all about, notwithstanding this terrible mess, more extreme politics, a sort of takeover of the worst, nastiest elements of the fringe of Australian politics finding its way into the parliament in a pretty ugly kind of way.
The capital gains tax, just finally, the Treasurer is not ruling out changes to the capital gains tax exemption. He was asked about it today. It's all about supply, though, isn't it, this question of housing prices? Why would you rein in an incentive like the capital gains tax exemption?
Well, I think what Jim said this morning is right. Like, he's not playing, and we're not doing the sort of rule in, rule out game, but he said, that the economic team's not spending time on that question. We are focused in the housing sector in particular on supply. You saw the agreement reached with South Australia that was launched by the Prime Minister and Premier Malinowskis, which will deliver 17,000 new homes, an $800 million deal. So government getting right behind, shoulder behind the wheel, driving new homes and new housing developments. 5% deposit for first home buyers is also a critical measure where many of your viewers and many of your viewers' kids can see for the first time an opportunity for them to jump into the housing market and get a foot on the ladder. And that program is delivering hand over fist for, in particular.
So CGT, no changes on the horizon.
It's not something that we're engaged in. It's not, as Jim said, the economic team's not spending time on that. We're not getting into a sort of rule in, rule out game, because you end up in a pretty silly world of ruling in and ruling out. I think last year the coalition was inviting us to rule in or rule out window taxes or something. Or I mean, it sort of reached this fever pitch, and when they're that negative and that focused on the sort of hyper-partisan stuff, it's no wonder they've got themselves in a pickle this year.
Industry Minister Tim Ayres, thanks. Appreciate it.
Kieran.